Hi, everybody. I wanted to take a moment to send out a big thank you video, actually, to um, everyone who was in my Sedona workshop recently. And let me share the story with you. David Smith, my business partner and dear friend, he had two boxes of my books in his garage. So he brought them to the workshop and he just put a sign there and he said, take it, take one and just leave a donation. And he said to me, "What do you want to give the money to?" And there's a hunger shelter, food shelter here in Oak Park called Beyond Hunger, and I said, I want to do the homeless and the food shelter." And somehow that message inspired all these people. And so 3 days ago, I walked into Beyond Hunger with a check for $3,000, and that and I have to tell you that buys $9,000 worth of food. $9,000. Now, before I gave him the check, this wonderful woman who works there took me on a tour. She said, "This is where we keep the vegetables. This we have canned goods. This is how we organize. We give make these boxes up." And then she looked at me. She said, "We can't keep up anymore." And you know, I have this. I just I cannot imagine a more challenging experience than being homeless, being a refugee and being homeless, being hungry on the street. I mean, think about how you don't even think. I don't think about it. I get up in the morning. I have one of those automatic coffee pots. My coffee's ready for me in the morning. I consider that a little luxury. I sit there, I turn on the news, and I, I don't think about being cold or hungry or where am I going to get something to eat. But if I did think about it, it's the most terrifying thought of all time. Where will I get something to drink? And I have this commitment to homeless and hungry people. And it was born in 1979, actually, when I was in graduate school. And this is how you can live in a bubble and think everything's like your life until it's not. And in 1979, I was renting a room in an apartment on Columbia Avenue in Chicago, which is this part of the street that I lived on was off Sheridan, and it's just a block long, and then you get to the beach, Lake Michigan. You get to and no, it's not lakefront. It was a crowded like apartment, six flats and things like that. And it never, ever occurred to me that people could be hungry on the block that I lived. Who, you just don't think that way. But that particular winter of 79 was the winter that turned a lot of things around here in Chicago because we had this blizzard, the famous blizzard of 79. I mean, there was snow everywhere. And it was the first time I ever saw people put chairs in parking spaces. And believe me, if you moved those chairs and put your car there, you wouldn't have tires when you got up in the morning. I mean, you just don't mess with that. But the snow, because of where this apartment building was, the six flat, you got the lake effect snow plus the 30 some inches that had fallen in 2 days. There was snow had snow. Cars were completely covered and didn't get out, some of them not till April, right? I mean, it was a snowstorm, the likes of which I have not seen since in this area. But during that storm, and right afterwards, when the world was just this white blanket, this neighbor comes over, never met him before, and he said, "We're going to go door to door and see if anyone needs any help." And I thought, well, that's interesting. Because I grew up in the suburbs and that kind of thing never even happened, but we never had snowstorms like this. That's Poppy. So I went with him. And I go up into this one apartment, and there's this woman. She was sitting on a stool in her kitchen. And I looked around, and it was a very grim place. It looked grim, and it felt grim, and kind of needed a clean up and that kind of thing. And as I looked, I saw her kitchen counter had several cans of cat food. And I said, "Oh, you have a cat?" And she said, "No." And I looked at her and I said, "Well, what's this?" She said, "Mine." My God, my God. Cat food then was like 22, 29 cents a can, because we're going back to 1979. I'm telling you, I did not have the presence of mind to cover my shock. I did not. I did not have it. I looked at her and I walked back home in this incredible state of shock that someone on the block that I was living on was starving and eating cat food. It was so shocking to me that I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop. And I even, I kept bringing her food. I did. And, when I brought her food, she was just passive. Her life had put her in shock. And to be honest, I was doing it for me because I was feeling so horrible that I felt, oh my God, what else can I do? What else can? And I was a student. It wasn't like I was making thousands of dollars a month. I was poor as a church mouse, but had much more than her because I'd never been hungry. I could not stop seeing her I still cannot stop seeing her for the rest of my life. She's my hunger angel. She's the one that tells me, remember what's out there. Remember, some people are eating dog food or cat food or whatever. So when the gift of $3,000 came, I cannot tell you how many people will benefit from that. I just can't tell you. It is so extraordinary. But the grief is so big because so many people now have to go to these hunger shelters for food. And the paradox of, how wealthy we're supposed to be and how poor the backside of our country is shocking. Is shocking. I don't preach religion. That's not my gig. But spirituality is, and the mystical side of it. And I take the mystical teachings of Buddha and Jesus and the Chief Joseph and Marcus Aurelius, the mystical teachings of the greats, to heart. I try to truly live them. And one of the teachings of Jesus was, be my hands in the world. Be my hands in the world. Feed people. Do what I would do if I was still there. Help them. Give them clothing. And I'll tell you, truly, truly, the more that the older I get, the more at home I am with the mystical inner world, the more I really know that's what counts. That's what counts. That's what heaven pays attention to. I remember listening to one woman with her near-death experience who said, when she had a life review, she said, I wasn't shown anything I was so proud of. I wasn't shown that I'd gotten a doctorate. I wasn't shown this. I wasn't shown the book I wrote. I wasn't shown anything. What I was shown was who I helped, that I never even thought of again. I never thought about that again. The universe doesn't care what we do. It cares who we help because of that. So you could go and get a doctorate or get a master's or do all the academic stuff or whatever. The universe could care less. It pays attention to who you helped or hurt along the way. And I'll tell you what is just shocking to me, shocking, is how many people are afraid to even give 50 cents to a homeless person, or 25, and the cruelty with which they think, well, they should have a job. Sometimes the human spirit can be broken, can be deeply wounded, can be so disheartened, so empty, that just getting up in the morning to the same hunger and the same emptiness, you want that person to suddenly think, I think I'll go for a job interview. They're broken. and a world of too much pain or too much despair, too much rejection. Some people can't get over being rejected 20 years ago by one person, much less society. Much less society. And we're not exactly moving into compassionate times. But I'll say this to you. Except for the grace of God, go I. Look at people and think, that could be me. Our lives could change in the blink of an eye. The thing I learned when I wrote Invisible Acts of Power were so many people who had been homeless submitted their stories to me about the help they received from others who were on the street. One person said, the greatest gift I received was not the largest sum of money, which was $10 that someone put in his cup. He said it was that someone touched me and wasn't afraid to touch me because I was so unclean, so needed a shower so badly, and said, I'll pray for you and you're going to get out of this. Gave me the gift of faith and prayer. Faith and prayer. Another man, I'll never forget this story. He talked about how he had once been a businessman and successful, and then one thing led to another, a perfect storm of all kinds of things that just gutted him. And the next thing you know, he was on the street begging. He never imagined that he would have to beg for $1. That alone breaks your spirit. There he was begging for money. And when he would get enough, when he would get like, $20 or $25, which took a long time, he would then sit near a grocery store. It had automatic, it had doors. And he would wait and calculate when he could walk in there because he couldn't bear to have a door shut in his face, because that metaphorically was how he felt life was treating him, as a huge door shutting constantly in his face. So he said this one time he was waiting, and he didn't see anybody approach the grocery store. He was so hungry. So he finally makes his way toward the door, and all of a sudden a man comes out of nowhere and cuts in front of him, all dressed up. And he said he started shaking from terror that someone who was a man like he once was, walked in ahead of him. And he was bracing himself to be humiliated, to have someone look at him and say, ugh. But instead, this man stopped, turned around, and said, excuse me, sir. And he noted when he wrote this story to me, he noted he called me sir. He said I hadn't been addressed like that in a couple of years since being on the street. He says nobody calls a homeless person sir, right? And he said, I thought, is he talking to me? And the next thing, he said, sir, yeah. He said, could you help me? Number two, he asked him for help. And he made note of this. He said, could I help you? I'm the one who needs help. And then he said, I don't know my way around here, and I'm looking for this address. So he helped him out, told him exactly where that was. And he said through the whole time, he was staring at this well-dressed man who wasn't repulsed by him at all. And he kept thinking, are you looking at me? Can you smell me? But nothing. And instead, the man flashed him this smile and said, thank you so much. You've been so much help to me. And he said, as those words flushed into him, he remembered what it was like to be of help. He remembered what it was like to feel esteem for himself. And it was that moment that he knew he'd get out of being homeless. Do you realize the gift that respect is? That just acknowledging another human being is. The wealth in that. People don't realize it until you're starving for it. Until you're starving for respect, you don't realize what one smile is, or what one act of kindness is. Everybody can give those things in abundance. Everybody. And I remember the words of Jesus, what you do to one person, you do to everybody. You're doing to me, you're doing to you. You don't get the mystical laws, but those are the laws heaven plays by. Those are the laws. So, again, to all of you who were in Sedona 2025, my love and thanks will be forever. I will never forget what you did, and neither will all of those people at Beyond Hunger. My deepest thanks, and to all of you, take time to give something to others. Something, anything, even the kindest smile you have. Thank you, everybody.